Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And with 9.0.5, we saw some of the most significant changes when it comes to meta shifts in terms of power on classes and specializations, and in particular, the healers. For a long time, if you're coming into Shadowlands now in 9.0.5, Holy Paladin has been completely dominating the scene. In my mind, an S tier healer, and really the only one up there with no significant weakness. We'd seen it predominantly in tournaments, pretty much in every composition, or at least every one that was able to win. However, it received a lot of nerfs. Other classes received buffs. And I think that with this patch, there has become a balance of a sort, at least, for healer diversity. However, it does come at a bit of a cost, and I'll talk about the cost a little bit later in the video. But if you're wondering where your class is currently sitting for 3v3 arena, a little bit of PvP in general, I'll try and go from multiple angles when I talk about them. The ranking is going to be based purely off of their proficiency in high rated arenas, but I will talk to strengths and weaknesses, what classes you should look to play with, and what might be holding a specialization back. So with the structure of this tier list, if you're in S tier specialization, it means that you have no clear distinct weakness. It is only benefits. That's the definition of it. I have created an A plus tier to try and differentiate between some of the healers based off of my experience on the ladder, having watched some streams and some trends that are currently underway. So let's just get started. Discipline Priest. In my mind, this is a healer with a distinct strength and a distinct weakness. It is highly enjoyable. It's actually my personal favorite specialization. However, because of its distinct weakness, its mana regeneration and mana retention, I would say that it does withhold it from going into the S tier category. However, it does synergize heavily in things like Rogue Mage still. It works with Ferals and Hunters. It works in melee cleaves as well with hybrids like Feral, Ret Paladins, and Enhancement Shamans. So it has a diverse range of options. If you're an LFG healer, it's a solid package, but it does come with a little bit of a drawback. So for me personally, Discipline Priest is currently an A plus healer. Not jumping up into the S tier because of the aforementioned weaknesses to its mana, but I think it is a good time, a good experience. You're desirable in all content pretty much in PvP, rated battlegrounds, 2v2 and 3v3. You can't really go wrong, but it's a little bit slightly above. Maybe there's some personal bias there. I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well in the comments down below and your experience with Discipline Priest if you think I'm totally off center with this one. Now, Holy Paladin, this is a healer in my mind that has dropped off a lot. It now has mana drawbacks significantly with even just that minor tweak to Holy Shock in the patch changes, as well as the removal of Shadow Resistance aura, which has now caused it to be a little bit weaker into Shadow Priest and Affliction Warlock, and it tends to be able to fall behind and lose on mana. Does it mean that it's a terrible healer now? I don't think so by any stretch. I think Holy Paladin is still a solid package, but if you are used to being God, and then again you're sent down to Earth, you are going to feel substantially weaker in that position. So for me, I don't think that it's jumping off the page as much as a Discipline Priest at the moment or an A plus healer, but I would say that it's in a spot where I would love to see eventually all the healers feel like they have a distinct strength and weakness. So now that their mana is a weakness, sacrifice redirecting damage to the Paladin twice as fast. Instead of over 12 seconds, it's redirected over 6. Means that switching to the Paladin is a lot more intense. But you still have Hammer of Justice, which is an excellent stun. You can still pair up in the game with Rogue Mage or Warrior Mage or Windwalker Mage. Still the standard comps, I think, work from the initial 9.0 patch of Shadowlands. And I've seen a lot of variants with Enhancement Shaman Arms Warrior, Ret Paladin Warrior as well, along with the Discipline Priest. You still have variety. I think that you're still a desirable healer for your burst output and your solid immediate denial cooldowns like Ultimate Sacrifice and Divine Shield, but now you're more down to earth. However, having played it a little bit, not at a super high rating, I'm gearing up my Paladin, and having played with Paladins and seen Paladins and their initial reactions to it, I think a lot of people are overreacting a bit, but it is weaker than S tier. So for me, I would put it down at about A. It's just a solid healer. You've got good options. You have strengths. You have weaknesses. It's still a lot of instant cast healing, which is what I think is bolstering its rank up to this point, if it wasn't able to rely so much on Divine Toll and Light of the Martyr to recover in situations where it wouldn't need to awkwardly cast and get interrupted more often, I think it would be a much lower ranked healer. But its ability to utilize just instant healing, its synergies with the best DPS specializations in the game, and its options, I think, justify it as a solid healer with many strengths as well as a couple weaknesses. Now, Holy Priest, I feel like this is kind of beating a dead horse a little bit. Everybody has been talking about it, and I was kind of ignoring everybody talking about it. Like, what are you talking about, Holy Priest? Like, is this really going to be a healer that people are going to play? Like, no one's really played this. It's not that popular. In my mind, it was really just envious on the North American ladder playing Holy Priest, but then we saw it creeping up a little bit. We saw it in the tournament. We saw Oxygen on Unitas be able to beat OTK 3-0 as Rogue Mage with Holy Priest. And now I'm seeing it on the ladder. I'm seeing Holy Priest in the spot of Holy Paladin in a lot of cases, even if it's double priest, like a Shadow Priest and a Holy Priest with a Mage. And it's really strong. Its mana retention is now better in my mind than Holy Paladin. It's better than Disciplined Priest. It does an all right amount of damage. I don't think it'll be comparable to like that instant cast judgment you get from a Holy Paladin in terms of burst, or the consistent damage that a Disciplined Priest can support because it's a healing is baked into its damage. So it's slightly weaker than those two in that regard, which is why I think it's not an S tier healer. It doesn't have that edge over the other healers, but its mana retention is definitely better. And the main reason that I think that it's powerful is that it has these powerful instant heals like Serenity and the Guardian Angel that can prevent death or a lethal kill, and having an instant cast ranged undispellable stun while talented allows it to directly compete with Holy Paladin, providing the ability to crowd control multiple targets. And Holy Priest, much like Disc and Holy Paladin, I've seen it with a lot of variety. It's not just a spell cleave healer anymore where it's playing with ranged only. I see it healing melee DPS. I see it in Rogue Mage, even in jungle in some matchups. It can really be flipped in there. And like I said at the start of the video, it's feeling like they're doing a great job so far with the little tweaks of getting every healer balanced in terms of its gameplay and its options. So for me, Holy Priest is slightly above A at the moment, due to it having much significantly better mana than Holy Paladin, its stun being undispellable, and having a couple more instant recoveries. Its main weakness, in my mind, comes into being targeted, and that still is the main weakness. If it didn't have that, I would say that it's an S tier healer, but targeting down the Holy Priest still remains kind of its Achilles heel and what prevents it from getting to S tier. But I almost wonder if you really want a healer to be an S tier. What do you think is the balancing of this? Should every healer be onto the same tier with a distinct strength and a clear weakness? Because in my mind, that's where I would want it to be. I feel like it's getting to that point. Now, Mistweaver Monk, this is one that received changes, but not the ones that people were really anticipating, as Mistweaver Monk struggles to deal with stuns and particularly dying in them. It got mana regeneration buffs. It was already really good at mana. I've seen it played in a couple of compositions like Shadow Priest Mage, Feral Warrior on the ladder a bit in tournaments with Arms Warrior Enhancement Shaman. However, I feel like it's a healer that can be replaced in all scenarios. It's not bringing any offense really. Even with Paralyze on a 30-second cooldown down from 45 from Battle for Azeroth. The main distinctive factor that Mistweaver used to have when it was around Legion was Way of the Crane. But Way of the Crane in Battle for Azeroth was taken away from an honor talent and placed into the normal talents. And then it needed to be balanced around PvE. And then while it was balanced around PvE, it became totally useless in PvP. So your ability to add any sort of real offense to the team is lost. In my mind, it almost views the same as Mercy in Overwatch, where you're kind of just chilling with the beam, healing people, not really doing too much, and occasionally tossing in a little bit of utility. But it does have solid output. It has really good mana regeneration. It has good qualities. Unfortunately, it still feels like a healer where it doesn't have any distinct place where it would be superior to another healer, even despite its great utility against dots, which I was thinking maybe it'll fit in an anti-dot cleave. Perhaps there is potential for it there, but even with Warlocks and Shadow Priests becoming more prevalent, I don't think that they're so overwhelming that's the only thing and the only option. At least from my games on Discipline, I ran into maybe one of them. It is quite an infuriating experience to be slowed infinitely by an Affliction Warlock, but I don't know if Mistweaver in my mind, has reached an A level. I think it's about a B because its healing output is solid. Its mana regeneration is really good. It will play long games, but because pretty much every other healer is going to be better in a different scenario, it's tough to give it a high ranking. Now, I put Prop Paladin here because it was here from the AWC with Drainer playing it. I think Prop Paladin is still a really good 2v2 healer, but this ranking is based off 3v3. And the main change to Prop Paladin now is that they are no longer immune to crowd control when they use Divine Steed, which had conduits increasing its duration to like absurd levels of like 20 plus seconds of crowd control immunity. That really enabled Prop Paladin, in my mind, as a ladder healer. Now, do I imagine people who are really dedicated to it, like Drainer, playing it still at some point? Probably. But in terms of its potential as a competitive ladder spec, I think that it is diminished quite heavily. I think you're going to have a lot more of a challenging time with it. It still does provide a ton of instant cast healing. It has a lot of immunity cooldowns. You probably still slot it, and maybe I should regrettably say this, slot it in things like Disc Priest and Arms Warrior as like a double healer setup. I'm sure it still works in those scenarios, but as a standalone healer, I think that it's going to fall off significantly. I'd say it's probably worse than Mistweaver. Maybe I'll come back to regret that, but I would say that it has fallen off heavily as a result. And I'm curious to see if players like Drainer, who really first pioneered it, are going to try and make it as a standalone healer again, or if they'll stick to other ones like Holy Priest or Mistweaver Monk. Now, Resto Druid is a healer that got slightly buffed as well, with its legendary, allowing you to extend your hots as well as just its healing output. So now Resto Druid can have mana problems, but it is also the best and easiest healer to drink on because you can go into stealth and drink. And also you can heal the targets while you're drinking because your hots are healing them, which make it a bit easier to kind of shore up that weakness of mana. But even without that weakness, its mana is still pretty good. Effectively being able to extend your Cenarian Ward on the target with your legendary when you summon the target means that you get like maybe around 20 seconds of that target is not going to die. It is just an immense amount of single target healing. There's pretty much only one ability in the game that can directly counter it, and that is Kleptomania from a mage, which is still prevalent and can hold Resto Druid in place. Without that, I think it would run rampant. It also provides buffs to protect important spells. So Warlocks hate getting their Dark Souls dispelled, Priests hate getting their Power Infusions dispelled, Mages hate getting their cooldowns dispelled. Resto Druid heal over time effects can help protect those from a lot of dispel mechanics in the game. And because Kleptomania may need to be used on HOTS, it does open opportunities for the specs to get their cooldowns out, which provides a little bit of unique play to have a Druid on your team specifically, because no other healer will provide you as many buffs for dispel protection. Resto Shaman's pretty close, but I think Resto Druid is kind of the top dog when it comes to that. Its healing output is really good, but let's cut to the chase in terms of its ranking. Its healing output is really good. I think it's in a solid position. Do we want to put it? This is where we really start getting into some debate. A or A plus. Its mana is better than a Holy Paladin, but in certain matchups, I think it would lose to a Holy Paladin composition. Something with Kleptomania or Purge, I think it does stand the opportunity to lose, as well as maybe some melee cleaves like Warrior Enhancement Shaman with a Paladin. So I think that it's not this is so hard. This is but maybe it's good that it's hard, right? It should be hard to rank the healers. There's no obvious leader in this regard. But for me, I think that it's more limited in diversity, which might be the reason I would hold it back. I see it being powerful with Warlocks and Shadow Priests, if not the most powerful healer, right? But when it comes to healing melee DPS, I think Holy Priest, Disc Priest, and Paladin, even Mistweaver in some cases is probably better, just getting instant crowd control with Paralyze. So you're not going to have many options maybe in melee cleave in terms of other healers would be more desirable there. In terms of melee ranged, I've seen a lot of like Windwalker Mage on the ladder, a little bit of Rogue Mage, but it's a very dampening healer. So Resto Druid is not offense, it's purely defense. So maybe that's what I think will hold it back. Whereas Holy Priest and even Disc Priest can play offense and defense. Resto Druid is only defense. Now, Restoration Shaman, this is probably going to be a hot take when I give Restoration Shaman its ranking, but it's a healer that I think is also pretty limited. It struggles to deal with a lot of the burst damage still. Its cooldowns are just not built for it. Earthen Wall It doesn't help you against a 20k crit. And Spirit Link Totem can be really dicey to use because you need to be close to your partners in the battlefield. So it can be a very stressful healer. Your main power point at the moment is you have the best mana, period, in the game. You probably don't even need to drink in a lot of cases. You are just flat out full mana at all times. Likely attributed again to water shield uptime as well as mana tide usage, but you will never get thirsty. So you do bring that to the table. You bring a lot of spellcaster denial, so you may be the best healer into double caster, but maybe not even all cases, because I feel like a Shadow Priest Fire Mage would love to kill you. Other classes that you play with will appreciate the grounding and wind shear that don't have a lot of ways to interrupt, like potentially Shadow Priest. So I do see your synergy still being there with the Shadow Priest. Is it an A tier healer? Is it on the same ranking? If you play with Retribution Paladin and Warrior, I think that the Retribution Paladin plus basically Word of Glory plus Intervene is kind of carrying your ability to not deal with burst healing. So if you pair up with hybrids like that, but I've not seen any Shaman Feral, not really any. So you need to be playing with hybrids that help out your lack of healing through burst damage. So Rep Paladins, Shadow Priests, I think that's where you're going to fare the best. Again, I've seen a couple Windwalker DKs, I think Seadu's team in particular, but I feel like they haven't been doing spectacularly as of recently here. And they've also been trying some Demon Hunter Death Knight. To me, Resto Shaman's strength is still going to lie with Rep Paladin Warrior, as likely its best composition. But it's not super powerful. So is it a B tier? Is Restoration Shaman currently a B tier healer? I think you're really going to have a hard time with Double Caster Holy Priest. You're going to have a hard time with a lot of stuff. Is it an A tier healer? I almost wish that I had made like a B plus and just removed S or something, or just had S as at the top level, because it's really hard. It's a good thing that it's hard. And we'll get to what I think is a problem at the moment in the game. But for me, Resto Shaman, if you're going to jump in, you've got a couple of options, really good mana. You're not as bad as a Mistweaver, right? I feel like you're kind of close. So maybe the way we'll organize this is, I think that the healers, this Holy Priest is the best on the A plus on the left. This Priest is second best. Then Holy Paladin is the best on the A's. Resto Druid is second best. Restoration Shaman is third best on the A's. And then there's a distinct difference between these, but these two are better than this. This one's better than this, for example. And then all of them better than this at the moment in my mind. So this patch definitely evened out the healers. My criticism now at the moment is that games are going on for a very long time in matches. If you're not under geared, of course, if you're watching this and you've just made an ult and you're dying really fast, right? You're likely dying by gear. But if you're fully geared, a lot of matchups, particularly with ranged DPS, I don't note this with melee DPS. When I see melee DPS into melee DPS, these games feel intense. I really love the level of intensity in those matchups. But when you get ranged classes like Shadow Priest, Balanced Druid, Mage, Warlock, and there's a lot of them in a game, it feels like dampening should almost just begin instantly, at least if there's two of these specs on a team, to try and increase the intensity so that the first 5 minutes doesn't feel like you're kind of just fishing around to see if anyone will make a massive error on cooldowns, and if they don't, then it's basically a stalemate until dampening gets really high. And I'm not liking that playstyle at the moment, at all, and I am worried about it. And I do see other criticisms on streams and on Twitter of players not liking it, the dampening meta that's starting to become more prevalent. And this is what happened in Battle for Azeroth as well. And I think one point of feedback from me and maybe a couple other people as well was that dampening should just start instantly when that becomes the case. This is my positive argument for dampening starting instantly, is that it's required for the game to end, but it also makes the game more intense. So if the healing is all reduced, right? So the hybrids on the melee DPS are providing a lot of healing. If you look at a scoreboard at the end of the game, you can see almost every spec is capable of doing half or more healing than a healer. And then the ones that can't are the worst specs in terms of DPS. because they can't do as much healing as a healer, or as close to as much healing as a healer. So dampening reduces that healing and then increases the intensity in moments where now, well, they don't recover back to full health. They actually can just lose in that scenario. So I'm a bit worried about the meta overall. While I appreciate the balance tuning and the healers coming a lot closer, and they all have options and they're all starting to feel like they have a spot. Mistweaver needs a little bit of help. I am worried that the game pacing is not in a good spot, despite the fact that the healers have options. And my initial point, again, would just be dampening starting instantly. What would you do to change the game, to try and make the games end a little bit faster? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the video, leave it with a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. It just lets you know when my videos go live. And if you want to follow me along with my gameplay on twitch.tv/Supatease, you can watch me live there. I'm doing my best to stream every evening. With a couple of afternoon streams as well. But aside from that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.